What's up YouTube, my name is CanceTurtle, and welcome to Fantendo Roast. It would seem we've reached the second episode without me abandoning the series. Wow, that's dedication. Today we're going to be talking about an actual Nintendo series this time, specifically Fire Emblem. I thought it would be kind of appropriate, what with me currently replaying Fire Emblem Awakening in preparation for the release of Fire Emblem Fates, which finally got a European and Australian release date, by the way. There was going to be some sort of dumb joke about Salt here, but it's not here because it was dumb. Instead, it's time for me to awaken my rage, because it's my fate to take a look at Fire Emblem ReAwakening. I'm sorry. The first thing I noticed is that a considerable amount of effort seems to have gone into this page. For one thing, there's box art. Yeah, it's just Awakening's box art slightly reshuffled and cropped, but that's more effort than I ever put into these. You're probably wondering, what is this? A sequel to Fire Emblem Awakening or something? Nope. It's a remake. Maybe this is just me, but there's only been one Fire Emblem game since Awakening. Do we really need a remake of it already? But if it's a remake, what can I really talk about? I can only really discuss the changes made to the original. So, it's a good thing that's all the page author has written then, isn't it? Less work for me. This remake is apparently for a console called the V2. I'll be covering Fantendo consoles some other time, but all you need to know right now is that it's a home console that can apparently play a high-definition Fire Emblem game. Also something about badges, but I'll come back to that later. Other than that, the first two paragraphs of this page aren't really noteworthy. I mean, aside from saying it's a re-release of Awakening, the information page pretty much just lists features of the original game. But for the controls, it uses a thing called the V-Raptor controller. I'm not the only one who thinks this just looks like a fancy GameCube controller, right? It's kinda like someone took the buttons off a Pro controller and shoved them onto a GameCube controller's body. And what's up with those back nipples there? Are they triggers? Why is one bigger than the other? Why are they both slanted the same way? I'm talking about the way the controller looks because I can't really talk about the controls themselves. It's just Awakening's controls on a hipster GameCube. Now onto the changes proper. We have the supportless difficulty. Brackets isolation. This mode apparently removes supports entirely, or at least that's what the page author initially says. However, I don't think he understands that support and pair-up/dual attack are very different things in Fire Emblem. Support is a statistic that can be gained between characters through special events or by having them pair up or fight next to each other. This can then unlock support conversations, and the reason why people call Awakening and Fates Waifu Emblem. The pair-up mechanic is not dependent on support. Characters who can't have support conversations are still able to be paired up in Awakening, so removing the ability to support would not automatically remove the ability to pair up. It would have been better to simply title this part Isolation Difficulty, and then explain that it removes supports, dual strikes, and the pair-up ability, not just calling it the supportless difficulty. That's not the only problem I have with this though. The storyline apparently makes random pairings between characters in order to allow you to get the children characters, except for Morgan. Now, I understand the reasoning for having the characters getting married, because if they don't, then like 12 of the units are completely inaccessible. I can also understand not letting Morgan be obtained this way, since Morgan's class actually depends on who his or her parents are. What I don't understand is why random pairings need to be made in order for the child units to be recruited. Yes, their stats and abilities do vary depending on who their parents are, but then having less abilities and such could simply add to the difficulty. We don't particularly need to know who their fathers are, aside from Lucina, since the support conversations would have been removed. They could be given their default hair color, which is shown in their official artwork. Not to mention, if you don't have Chrom gain enough support before the time when Lucina's supposed to be born, he marries a random villager, so why can't the other characters do that? They could easily marry someone outside the Shepherds, thus resulting in these child units. It just doesn't really make much sense to randomly get them married, especially when marriage is one of the aspects dependent on support. Not to mention, with Sumia having so few people to support with, it's possible for you to miss out on having her child. A possibility that only increases when you leave it to RNG. If you don't want all the paralogs instantly available after recruiting Lucina, then how about you make it so the paralog becomes available after the child unit's mother reaches a certain level? Or, I guess, has gained a certain amount of levels, since their level resets after reclassing. This whole random business just feels very off to me. But I suppose it's time to move on from that and talk about the ability to replay story missions. Unlike the randomness of isolation difficulty, I like this addition. In my first playthrough of Fire Emblem Awakening, I actually missed out on recruiting Gaius because I didn't realize he was someone who could be recruited. And by the time I found out, it was too late for me to reset and go back. Having the ability to replay old missions and recruit missed characters would be great. Not only that, but it also helps with training, because you can go off to a specific mission instead of hoping that the Risen will be a low enough level in the place they've spawned in order to use them to train your lower level units. It also makes a great deal of sense for a game like this, because of how much the game already deals with time travel, especially if you have to wait until after you've recruited Lucina. It's good. There's also the DLC missions being included with the base game. It's not really good or bad, it's just something I'd expect from a remake like this. There's also changes made to the story, by which he means the supports. Female Robin and Tharja can now S-rank, which I think kinda makes sense. Tharja always acts all stalkery towards Robin, regardless of their gender, and I'm pretty sure one of the characters capable of gay marriage in Fates is an alternate universe Tharja. So having actual Tharja capable of marrying the woman she's stalkering, to me, makes as much sense as having Tharja marry the man she's stalkering. And since you can actually do that in the game, I'd be okay with this. I'd also be okay with Chrom and Cordelia being able to support. I know the game kinda tries to force you to marry Chrom to Sumia, but several characters mention that Cordelia, like Sumia, also has a crush on Chrom. And yet, she can't support with him in any capacity. Why? Good change, sir. We've also got more A-rank conversations. There's Chrom and Rickon, and since we do see a bit of interaction between these two in-game, I think having them being able to support makes sense. Then there's 3 Lissa supports, with Cordelia, Tharja, and Lucina. Lucina I can understand, since Lissa is technically her aunt, but why Tharja and Cordelia? I know characters don't really need to have a reason to talk to each other, but with you only providing the characters and not the dialogue, I'm having a hard time imagining how these characters would interact. Maybe that's just me, but I feel a little description of what's talked about in the support conversations certainly wouldn't have gone astray here. And then miscellaneous changes, by which he means the graphics are better. Because it's a remake, of course he had to specifically state that the graphics would be better than the original, totally. Amiibo! I love Amiibo! Also, that logo is cool. I know it's probably just a purple version of the dragon from Awakening's logo with the Amiibo logo slapped on top, but I like that he took the time to include it. With Amiibo, you can save a character's stats, and that allows you to put your units in another person's game. As much as I like Amiibo, this seems dumb. While a stat-saving thing like this may have worked in games like Smash Bros. Or Skylanders, those games both have one thing that Fire Emblem doesn't: heavily involved multiplayer. You're not going to bring your Amiibo over to a friend's house and put your character in their game, because Fire Emblem isn't built around multiplayer. You know what would have been better? If, along with these characters being able to be put in other people's copies of ReAwakening, he had stated that there would be future Fire Emblem games on the V2, and that you could use these characters with those games. You know, something like how Fire Emblem Fates allows you to scan Fire Emblem Amiibo and recruit those characters. That way, while you're still recruiting characters from other games, like in Fates, they're not just the character, they're your character. The character you've trained up yourself and are now bringing up into a future game. That would have made this so much more worth it. But, unfortunately, ReAwakening is the only Fire Emblem game on the V2. But anyway, what Amiibo do they actually have, because it's not like people actually care what they do. Wave 1 has Chrom, Robin, and Tharja, and there's no Wave 2. Why Tharja? Especially since she and Cordelia apparently already have Amiibo from Super Smash Bros. Assemble. Let me just make a note of that so I remember to include that when I end up making a Smash Bros. Roasting. Why would you put Tharja in the Wave 1? Especially if you're not going to make more than that. Tharja may be popular enough to be reincarnated in Fates, but she's not particularly important to the story, nor does she show up particularly early in the game. So why have her as part of Wave 1? If I were making this, my Wave 1 would have either been Chrom, Robin, and Lucina, getting all the main characters out there, or Chrom, Robin, Lissa, and Frederick, the first 4 party members you get. The only situation in which Tharja would be one of the first to get an Amiibo is if the first wave was Chrom, Gaius, Tharja, and Cordelia. You know, the ones who are voted most sexy or whatever. But his Tharja bias goes further than 2 Amiibo and a spot in Smash. Because now we move on to badges. Remember how I mentioned those earlier? You see, the V squared has badges to decorate your home menu with, sort of like the 3DS. But instead of winning these badges at a virtual arcade, you can either buy packs of badges or unlock them as a reward for, well, basically getting achievements. Fire Emblem ReAwakening makes use of this feature and has 3 badges. There's Robin, who is unlocked by creating your avatar, in other words, starting the game. Great achievement, definitely prizeworthy. Next is Chrom, who you unlock by completing the prologue. I mean, if they were going to do that, I'd expect a badge for every chapter completed, but nope. There's only one badge left. It's Tharja. Unlocked by recruiting Tharja. Look, I know you like Tharja, Mr. Page Author, but your bias is showing, and that's not a good thing. Just as it makes no sense for there to only be 3 Amiibo, with one of them being Tharja, it makes no sense for there to only be 3 badges, with one of them being Tharja. Tharja may be popular, but she's not an important character in the slightest. She would, probably, not get these privileges over characters like Lucina, Flavia, Basilio, Sayri, Tiki, Emerin, Gangrel, Walhart, heck, probably even Sumia. You know, plot important characters? The only reason Tharja would be one of the few to get this privilege is because of your Tharja bias. And apparently, despite putting in more effort than most other Fantendo page creators by making box art, you were too lazy to do the rest of the cast of Awakening. In fact, I'm guessing the only reason Chrom and Robin have Amiibo and badges is because Chrom and Robin are the 2 most important characters in the entirety of Awakening, and it'd look really dumb if you didn't include them. But guess what? You still look dumb. Because you gave Tharja the same privileges as 2 of the most important characters in the game, and didn't do the same for anyone else. What if I wanted a Donald badge? Or Alyssa Amiibo? Well, I guess I'm out of luck because Mr. Page Author's Tharja bias is too deep. So, in summary, this port is entirely unnecessary, what with Awakening being so recent and everything. And it probably only exists because this guy loves Tharja so much and wanted an excuse to give her a badge and an Amiibo. He had some good additions, and some bad additions, and some additions. But that right there at the end kind of ruined it for me. I don't mind if you like Tharja, you can like who you want. But if you want to be taken seriously, try not to let your bias seep into your work. I have a feeling that quote is probably going to come back and bite me in the ass at some point. If you've got a specific topic or page you'd like me to roast, stick it in them there comments. I'm done! Thanks for watching. I'm surprised you're still here after the first episode. I'm sorry if I wasn't as loud and animated as I was in the first episode, but that part at the end annoyed me to the point of wanting to make an episode about this, and I didn't actually expect it to be long enough to fill up the time by itself. Fun fact, that dumb joke about salt was actually removed because I was salty about Fire Emblem Fates not having an Australian release date, but then it got a release date before I could actually record this episode. If you want to watch the previous episode of Fantendo Roast, click that top annotation there and it'll take you right to it. It's about Cartoon Network versus Mortal Kombat. And the random plug video this time, it's still the first episode of my Ruby Rose Ace Attorney playthrough. I haven't had time to make different videos. They're coming. Trust me. Oh, and I forgot to mention this last time, but if you check in the description, you'll find links to the pages, or in this case page, that I roasted during the episode. That's all I got to say. I'll catch you guys on the flip side. Have a good life!